The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you within a cannon shot of the hallowed fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me. Now, Arcane Radio and Beyond Explanation channel are made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super Chat donations are essential for us to continue offering our unique content. Your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. Now, because of the recent revelations involving the winged ones, also the unseen ones, we are asking for worldwide public to come forward with your sightings and encounters with these winged humanoids. You can contact me at 410-241-5974 or at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. Please feel free to share any of the encounters that you have with me. So tonight, I'd like to welcome HorrorFix.com owner and director Ash Hamilton to Arcane Radio. Now, Ash recently directed the feature Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. He is also an adjunct instructor at Lincoln Land Community College in his hometown of Springfield, Illinois. His website can be found at horror-fix.com. So, Ash, thanks for coming on the show with me this evening.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Lon. I appreciate it.
So, HorrorFix, this is your baby. Tell us a bit about it.
So, I used to live on the East Coast, and when I was there, I was mainly positioned myself as a graphic designer, a web designer, did a lot of video editing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, I was doing websites for people for their hobbies, their interests, and didn't really have anything as far as anything that I was really interested in for myself. And when I ended up moving back to the Illinois area from New York, after, my divorce and everything, and sort of just trying to rebuild my life, I'm like, I really need to throw myself into something. I've been able to help so many other people with what they wanted to do. I've always had a real interest in the horror and sci-fi genres, specifically film. And I thought, well, let's go ahead and let's try this out. Let's actually make something for myself for a change. I've done a lot of writing in the past, and I thought, I can do some reviews and do some editorial stuff. And now that has been, it's been about 10 years now that I've been doing it. So when I look at how many things we posted, how long I've been doing it, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, so 10 years doing the horror fix, I guess, horror challenge, if you will, of doing this sort of like daily news, reviews, anything that's genre related, we basically are a part of.
So you've been doing this about a decade now. Has anything changed in this industry that you can see or you could talk about a bit?
A lot has changed. Specifically, the way movies are funded, I think more so than almost anything.
Oh, yeah.
Crowdfunding has totally changed the landscape of film, and I think it's going to keep changing it. The way that films are pushed through the production process is so much different. The public, first of all, never really had that much of a choice of their entertainment. Of course, you go to a film, you buy a ticket, that influences sales, which then, influence if you're going to get a sequel, if it's going to get a wider release. So we had that kind of influence. as far as ticket sales, going to a theater, but we never really had like a voice, a real voice. And a lot of pre-internet, there was just really no way to sort of inject yourself in that community. There were no open doors. And now, as you see more crowdfunding becoming prominent, especially in horror and sci-fi, you're seeing that like these genres are really more now being controlled by the fans than probably ever before. We're getting sequels to films we never thought we'd see. We're getting subject matter we never thought we'd see. And these are things that probably wouldn't be green lit, Lon. Like these are things that Hollywood, I don't think that they're sort of in the trenches enough, with fandom to really know what to push. They just know that we've got an idea, we've got actors attached to it, we think it's going to fly. But now there's so much of this audience interaction that the crowd can get in there and say, hey, listen, if we raise $500,000, they're going to start this movie, and then they'll supplement the rest with Hollywood dollars. So in the last 10 years specifically, I think it's been, at least in my opinion, that crowdfunding movement has just totally changed the game. It's completely different now.
Yeah, I mean, for what I see, it looks like many of these networks are are more reluctant to just put up the budgets the way they used to. Now, of course, when the paranormal movies started, paranormal shows started coming out, the Ghostbusters and Ghost Hunters and this and that.
Yeah.
When that started coming out, there was a budget for it, but it kind of became flooded with all this stuff, and of course the cryptids started picking up, and there's been some like Monster Quest, for example, and that was kind of the first real cryptid show to come out, and that had a lot of success. But I just don't think the budgets are there as like they used to be. And of course, with the crowdfunding, the more independent person, the more independent producers and directors can put what they want out there, and they can get ideas from their fans on what to use. So absolutely. And in fact, your film, I don't know how you funded it, and I'm quite sure you did it through crowdsourcing at some point. It was I don't know exactly how successful you were in getting funds, but whatever you did get, you was well used.
Yeah, and I'll let you in on a little secret. Like we entirely self-funded it.
No,
yeah, we had we had a production pre-COVID that we were getting off the ground, and it was a pretty big production. It's it's weird when people talk Hollywood, because like when you look at stuff like SAG, like when you start really looking at representation and how movies are pushed through like the official channels, like a micro budget, what they call micro budget in like the Hollywood world, is like $250,000.
exactly.
Like they attach micro budget to that, and indie filmmakers are looking at that going, oh, I could make 8 movies with $350,000. And yet it's a micro budget feature. So we were looking at a film that we had written and we had started to cast. It got quite a bit of momentum behind it. It was a horror comedy. It was a genre film. It was more heavy sort of on the comedy than the horror aspect. And we had attached some actors that were genre actors that we personally really enjoyed, like Michael Pare from Philadelphia Experiment and Bone Tomahawk was involved. Robert Lasardo from Clint Eastwood's The Mule and Nip Tuck was involved. We had some really, really strong talent that was on with us. And then COVID came. And everything that we had sort of built around this production just imploded. And for someone who really had been involved in more very, very small projects, it was a big blow, to get so close to sort of pushing this bigger thing through, which, for me probably would have opened up a few more doors to even bigger projects. And just to look at it sort of crumble and realize that, it's part of the business. Things come and go in Hollywood. Things come and go in the entertainment industry, where there are a lot more undeveloped projects than there are developed projects.
Oh, absolutely.
And you put all this time into it, and during a lot of the the sort of the pandemic isolation and quarantine, I had revisited a lot of stories and things that I'd wanted to do. And as a writer, sometimes it's difficult. You have very big ideas, and when you're writing a script, you take a look at those ideas, and you might have a page that's a $10,000 page.
Mhm.
You might be looking at this page and going, if I cut this page, we can cut $10,000 out. And I know that I had personally written stories that I wanted to see, and I never really had a lot of awareness of pushing for one budget or another. So I'd write a script and then I'd go over it and see, how much it was going to cost to make that script. And for the first time, because of funding was just going crazy during pandemic, nobody wanted to really invest in anything. Nobody really even knew how things were going to get shot. Things with SAG were changing by the minute.
Mhm.
You'd be involved in a production, and then all of a sudden you couldn't have X amount of people on set. Then you couldn't have X amount of people staying on location. So everything was changing. And I said to myself, maybe I should just write something that costs next to nothing. Like maybe I need to write with an idea of my limitations in mind. And maybe that's a different approach for me. And actually, I started having a lot of fun with that idea because I had some of my own experiences that were in the world of the paranormal and that were sort of ufological related.
Mhm.
And I started putting a lot of that into the script. And as I started to think more about, what my personal investment was as to, how much of this was going to be based on a true story, how much of this was going to be based on maybe a personal story, then it sort of became easier to also sort of fund it because I had a really good idea in mind of what I wanted and what our limitations were. So to say that it's a small movie with a small budget is even sort of like an understatement. It was a very small budget, but
Yeah.
we were so conscious of what we wanted as we were doing the film that I would like to say with a degree of confidence that it doesn't come across as an extremely small movie. And sort of by the time you end up watching the full thing, you're like, oh, well, maybe they did have some money. Maybe they were able to put some money into this. We did a lot. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors
Oh, sure.
involved,
Oh,
Hollywood
absolutely.
magic.
No, I think you did a pretty good job. I mean,
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Of course, me looking at it in a critical eye, I was looking for some of that, see how they did this, how they did that. But no, quite frankly, it was pretty well done.
Thank you.
And I mean, it was like it was a fictional account, but basically, like I told you, it had a little bit of the actuality of what people have been reporting over the years, bits and pieces of it here and there, which actually made it very believable. And yeah, I mean, it kind of made you think, like, oh, did this really happen? And I think that's what you were going for. The people thinking, well, is this something that may have happened, or So yeah, I think you succeeded in that.
And that means a lot because as a moviegoer and as a cinephile, when I look back on the movies that had an impact on me, those were the films that sort of opened a new world for me,
Mhm.
where I could truly, be an escapist. And when we look back on stuff like Star Wars, stuff that pushed the boundaries, and we really hadn't seen stuff like that happen before, or
Mhm.
even, and I'll say it just because a lot of moviegoers hadn't really seen a lot of the 3D visual effects the way they're presented, but even movies like Pandora, I'm sorry, Avatar with worlds like Pandora just
Mhm.
open up a sort of different palette of visuals people aren't used to.
Mhm.
So being able to create something, or if even for a second someone's sitting there questioning, like, I wonder if this is really a documentary, if this is really a film, like to me, that means a lot because that's that movie magic to me. If there's 1 second where you can suspend disbelief and it becomes something a little more, like, to me, that's the kind of filmmaking that I want to do,
Yeah.
where I can open up at least an avenue of thought and maybe make it a little more provocative in that sense than maybe just a typical horror film.
But you had me guessing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I did. I was guessing and wondering, well, is this a case I maybe had missed at some point? Because I never heard of the Sean Miller case.
Right.
And I was thinking, well, maybe this is something that Ash and his people had looked into and decided to make a film of. But it was, as time went on, I figured, this is kind of a homage to the whole abductions, all the abduction scenarios and stuff from the past and maybe in the future. But yeah, I liked it. I really did.
And we had some instances actually, Lon, that were very strange where we caught some stuff on camera that we didn't expect, to be honest with you. So there are elements when you're watching the film that are not staged. There are some instances where we were and I'll give one for example. There's a part in the film where we start doing test footage with our subject, and usually when we go into a place and we start doing test footage, because I've done a lot of documentary and interview Q&A work on camera, is that you come in, you just want to get them on camera, get them comfortable. You maybe don't have the light set up yet. You don't even have, any of the lav mics or anything on. Like, you're just getting them in front of the camera, getting them comfortable. And we were doing that a lot because we worked with a lot of non-actors for this. Like a lot of people in the film are non-actors, people who did not even suspect that they were going to be in a film. And, they're people we knew, and we said, we want to get something organic and that looks real. So we don't want people who are conscious of reading lines. We want to do this a little bit differently. And there's a point where we're doing test footage with our subject, Sean. And as we're talking to him, a pot, a very heavy pot that is actually nailed onto the wall, comes off of the wall.
Oh, that actually happened.
That actually happened, yeah. So as we were doing test footage, that happened. He thought that it was part of the gag. So after, we cut, he was like, wow, like, you guys are really doing this. Like, you're really doing this even when I'm not aware of it. And I said, I hate to tell you this, Sean, but we did not do that. We were unaware that was going to happen. And then we were talking about gags involving lights flickering, things of that nature, which is very common in a lot of paranormal investigations, electricity being affected. And we had instances where we did have some lights that were flickering independent, and we did not know why. We continue to have things come off the wall, mirrors, paintings. And that happened during probably the first 2 or 3 weeks of shooting. And a lot of that is actually captured in the film. We left it in to get some of those genuine reactions from the cast, from our actors.
That's interesting because it works. I mean, you do hear stories about productions. I'm usually bigger productions about what a bunch of crazy stuff will happen on the set. But now that place where you actually went on location to film, especially inside the house.
Yeah.
Did that place have a history of paranormal activity?
No, it's an old place, and it's actually where I live.
Okay.
We actually filmed it where we live, and this is a part of my wife's family actually owns quite a bit of land out here.
Okay.
And this is part of that land. And we're very, very remote. We're about a mile to the nearest neighbor. Yeah, we're outside of, we are outside of Springfield, which is a largely populated area, about 150,000 or so. But we're far enough outside that we've got one LED light, gives us about a 50-foot spread of light on our property. And then once you're past that light, if there's no moonlight or natural light, it's complete and total blackness. So there's an air about the place when you get here because of how isolated we are. And we didn't know of any real history behind the place, but we get a lot of visitors that have feelings, have intuition, that definitely there's an air about the place when you get here.
Well, watching the film, it looked like there's something real going on there. And that's why I asked. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this in the past or mentioned it, but I've got an affinity for like thought form manifestations, and possibly maybe something that you were, because of the film, and you were actually recreating or trying to recreate something, actually manifested some type of activity.
And we've had that discussion, myself and I'm lucky that a lot of the cast are people that we know personally and very open-minded people. So when we went into this, even though we went into it with the idea that we had a narrative and a narrative that we sort of wanted to stick to, we were very conversation oriented about the principles behind the film, about what we really wanted to show, and how we wanted people to view it.
Right.
So there were a couple of times where we were in that discussion of, are we creating something with the very idea of trying to get something on camera, and then some of those things actually sort of manifesting as we're shooting. So yeah, that was a conversation that came up more than once, actually.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. It seems to be something that more and more people are, that are recognizing now, that are thinking about. Who's to say? I mean, when you're doing a movie about alien abduction or alien encounters, maybe you may have been drawing something there as well. So that's an interesting thought. Now, folks, if you have questions and you're in the chat tonight, if you have a question for Ash or about horrorfix.com or the film, please put it in the chat. Do it with caps, and I'll go ahead and be able to see it, and I'll give it to Ash. So what you got working on now? Are you working on a follow-up to the film, or are you going to do something different?
We've had some interest in continuing the story.
Okay.
The film is for those that have seen it, is pretty open-ended, and we know that there's a possibility there. We're still sort of fielding offers with the film right now, and we have had a lot of interest. We've done very well in the festival circuit. We've got a lot of interest in where it's going to go as far
Well, go ahead and
as
tell folks how many awards you've won so far.
so far we're at eight awards, and that
That's
includes
impressive.
Yeah, we've been very, very fortunate, and it includes where we've won best reality horror, best science fiction feature, best director, best feature film, best horror film, best science fiction film, and we even won one for best documentary format film. So we've been hitting a lot of festivals, and we've been getting a lot of love from the festivals, which is great. We've got a festival right now that we're in that's an online hybrid, where people can actually watch the film online.
Okay.
They can buy a ticket to the festival, and it's part of the festival. And there's an awards ceremony tomorrow for that. So we don't know if we're up for anything, but we will attend, at least to meet some of the other filmmakers. So we're excited about that too. So yeah, we've been getting a lot of love right now.
Yeah, somebody wanted to know if you thought it might have been poltergeist activity. I don't know. When you can't really, it's hard to tell what's going on when something like that would happen. But it seems from the way you're talking that there were other instances of activity as well, other than what you had talked about with the pot and stuff coming off the walls.
And we've had some part of the reason I think that we chose to do the story was this property that we're at has, like I said, it has sort of its own personality about it. And there were a couple of nights where like we have a dirt road in front of our house, and we have our post office, a little, our box there, and then it's a field with a tree line. And we had a couple instances where we saw some lights above that tree line, lights that we really couldn't nail down to be anything that we were aware of, that were sort of exhibiting behaviors, acting certain ways that were very, very strange. And we had that a few nights, and that sort of also led to, well, all of these things in combination sort of lend themselves to, this is a story that could very easily take place in this area, in this location with this remoteness. So there are things surrounding it, definitely, that led us to believe that, we were sort of telling a story that was unfolding as well. I guess you could say that.
Well, we do have a question in the chat that people are asking, and I guess it has to do with what we're experiencing in Chicago. But what are your views on extraterrestrials or other interdimensional beings? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing some and hearing some very interesting things just over the last probably 15 years. from a lot of different sources, from everything like Whitley Strieber and his experiences with his wife who's been departed,
Mhm.
and the fact that I think we used to compartmentalize these things so
Mhm.
much, like it was just the paranormal and the afterlife and NDEs, and then we had UFOs, and then we had cryptids,
Mhm.
and I think for the longest time people were very um very careful not to let those areas bleed into one another. Like people wanted to keep them very separate, people wanted to keep them
Yeah.
very autonomous. And I think we're seeing now that I think it's far, far stranger than what we even thought it was.
Well,
And I think
I used to have a lot of pushback on that because I used to, I be investigating one phenomenon and something else bleeds into it, and then you start to wonder, well, how related are these things? I mean, and I did for years, and I still do occasionally, talking about interdimensionals as far as with cryptids and then UFO activity and possibly spiritual activity, actually happening on a single case. And you start to wonder, it's just like we're going on in Chicago. We got something going on that we really had no idea what it was. Then we're starting to get information that maybe we're talking about something that's otherworldly as opposed to some type of cryptid being. So
I
who
think
knows?
we're so prone, and especially when you look at ufology and just the subject of seeing a UFO in the sky versus the abduction experience. When you see a UFO in the sky, or when you see something that you're pretty sure is not, indigenous to this planet, something that's
Right.
extraterrestrial, there's this linear path of thinking that you have, which is, okay, this is a craft, it's a vessel.
Hmm.
If it's a vessel, it has occupants.
Hmm.
If it has occupants, they're steering.
Hmm.
If they're steering, it has controls. If it has controls, it was manufactured. If it was manufactured, it was done in the plant. If it was in a plant, there's a location and a city and a planet. Like it's very linear thinking. It'd be the same way as seeing us land one of our aircrafts.
Right.
That way of thinking is just, it's breadcrumbs. This has to beget
Yeah.
this begets this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you go into the abduction experience,
Right.
which is so bizarre that now that whole breadcrumb way of thinking is like thrown out the window. You're talking about beings who can materialize essentially out of thin air,
Hmm.
the ability that they have to control people's willpower, um, the the aspect of telekinesis, the aspect of telepathy, and now people are talking about this idea of abductees also experiencing periods where they were talking to deceased relatives.
Hmm.
It becomes so bizarre that you've got that very, what I would consider, this ethnocentric view, which is we have the human experience, and that's people making stuff and people flying stuff and then people landing stuff and getting out of it.
Hmm.
And then we have that whole other experience, which borders upon fantasy, where it's so fantastic
Hmm.
that we don't even know where to start. We
Well, that's
we
it.
we don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, you've made a movie now about alien encounters, extraterrestrial encounters, abductions. What are your actual thoughts on the phenomena? Do you think these otherworldly beings are coming to our plane, our Earth plane, and actually abducting humans?
Yeah, yeah. I,
Do you?
I I think that it's been going on for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Um, I think at one point in time, I used to read a lot of Keel and even some of the latter Jacques Vallée stuff. It's
Sure.
stuff that's always really interested me, and those are some guys like Jacques Vallée specifically, who at one point was a very nuts and bolts researcher, and
Right.
and then got into this very like Jungian sort of approach to ufology, and I kind of sort of go with that really sort of weird standpoint and approach to it, where I think at one point in time we probably didn't see these beings as extraterrestrials. They were the Tuatha Dudanan, and they were, you know, part of, they were a fairy ring, and they
Mhm.
were this, and they were that, and that leads me to believe that yes, this is going on, but I think there's this prankster mentality there where I don't really know if we're seeing what we think we're seeing. I think that
It's hard to
we
tell.
see
I
some
mean,
strange stuff.
yeah, you know, well, you go back and start listening. You talked about Valet and talked about Keel, and you know they kind of, you know, Keel used to talk about tricksters and such, and then Valet, you know, he kind of gave the whole extraterrestrial name genre in his writings and his research. But honestly, I don't know what to think. You know, I wrote a book about, you know, this UFO, well, basically more alien experiences, and you know, I'm still confused as to what's going on. I mean,
It's mind blowing.
yeah, you hear all kinds of
It
different
is.
stuff, and it's never ending. You're always getting updates and changes to it, and someone will always come up with something different. And it doesn't really change my mind, but it kind of adds to what's going on and what you've been thinking about in the past. And you know, I it's never going to be a moot subject. Let's put it that way.
No, it's like every time you think you've got a beat on it, you know,
Yeah.
every time that you've got a wealth of data and you sift through it, and you know, you think that again, you've I think the human experience sometimes really sort of taints our ability to begin to understand any of this
Yeah.
because of just the way that we think. We've got these borders that we can't sort of break out of, which is always okay. So we've got these people. Now we got to know where they come from.
Hmm.
And it's very solid, tangible. We're always thinking about, again, them living in houses, which is on a planet, which is in a solar system, in a galaxy. And when you're talking about stuff like ultra terrestrials, talking about, you know, a hyperdimensional model, we might not be even remotely prepared for what these things are. We might
True.
not have the framework to be able to accurately understand it.
Yeah, you know, the general thought has been for a long time now that they're coming here on craft, and you know, they're hovering above us and abducting us, or abducting animals or whatever they're abducting, you know, with craft, unidentified craft. And yeah, that does happen. People do mention that, but I think it's much more deeper than that. I mean, uh, you know, I've been investigating with the David Eckhart thing for a long time. That was all portal travel, nothing
Hmm.
to do with UFOs whatsoever. That kind of opened my eyes up as to what may be going on. You know, we still really don't know what's happening with him, and there's a lot of stuff still going on there. So, you know, who knows? I mean, maybe 2 years from now, we'll have another thought about what's going on. This will change. But like I said, there's always going to be something else happening to get us thinking about this once again.
Yeah, you know, I always thought that, you know, with the advent of mobile technology,
Mhm.
the more cell phone usage we have, that we would start to be able to better classify and categorize these things. But now with the footage we are getting footage that far defies any kind of classification.
Mhm.
It's like we're getting tons more data, but that data is just opening everything up to the point where it's even harder to classify it and categorize it. It's
Mhm.
again, it passes strange. It's beyond weird. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Well, you know, I get a lot of stories. I get a lot of accounts all the time, and it never fails. I'll have something in mind, and something will come up, and it's just, you know, I'm there like, whoa, what the hell was that all about? And you know, then you get on the phone or with this person and talk to them, and because you're going into it right off the bat thinking, well, this person must be touched or something's going on with this guy or this woman. And wow, then they tell you a story that you really start to think about. and your perspective changes very quickly. And that's kind of what's been going on with me for these past 30 years or so. It's just like, it's it's an evolution, basically what it is. Is the genre going to catch up with what people are actually going through? I don't know. I've tried to demonstrate that for years, and in that book of mine, Alien Disclosure, I tried to do that as well. But when you worked on this film, and when you're writing the script, what's the one thing? I mean, what's the one thing that you tried to dramatize in the film?
Oh, we lost him real quick. As soon as I can, I'll bring him back in. But yeah, his line just went down, so
okay,
I'll bring him back as soon as I can.
Well, folks, we'll try to get cooked up with Ash again. Unfortunately, these things do happen. But no, once again, if you got some questions for Ash or myself, go ahead and put it up there on the chat, and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. Anyway, like I said before, we've been working with this, what's been going on in Chicago, the Unseen Ones, and there's been some controversy about it, and it's nothing unknown. I kind of live with controversy. I mean, this is just what I do. So, but we're trying to get a better survey, worldwide survey of these winged beings. And hopefully, if you're listening here from somewhere across the world and you've had an encounter with a winged being, please feel free to contact us, because we're trying to get a survey of this and try to get a better understanding of what is going on. Let's see, what kind of questions? No, I got any questions? Well, unfortunately, when this thing happens, because now I'm left sitting here with not having anything to say. But no, I don't know. I mean, if there's anything you want me to talk about before Ash comes on here, let me know. There's been a lot of things that have been going on with us. Of course, with Chicago, Lon, Mothman, the Windy City. I'm from Chicago, and we had sightings in the 70s. I know. This isn't something that's just happening now. This has been going on for a long time. And that's become very apparent, as we've been going through this, these recent sightings in the past 5 years. People are coming forward with older sightings. So, yeah, it's not something that's, it's not really that new, but we're just getting a lot of them now. Oh. Yeah, I was just told about something I wanted to mention about there's Ash. You hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Everything dropped there for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was my side, your side, or what happened, but it happens on occasion. So, once again, I mean, I was asking about the film itself. Was there something that you were trying to get into the film, and something may have happened that you had to adjust the story of the story that you originally wanted? Because I will tell you something, the figure in the field kind of freaked me out, because I've heard several scenarios like that from experiencers.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you know him personally, but we got to know an experiencer, Terry Lovelace.
Okay.
And I had screened the film for Terry actually at one point, because I said, I'm taking a lot of this from things that I've read. I'm taking some of this from personal experiences, and there are some things that I really want to hit. Like, there are some beats that I really want to hit with this.
Mm-hmm.
And, Terry actually came back and said, that he had problems watching the film at night, because it was hitting on some of his experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And a few people have actually commented on the man in the field as being very unsettling. Mm-hmm. That there's just something about that particular encounter. We had a couple things that we really wanted to do that we were unfortunately not able to do with our budget.
Okay.
One of which was, and this is just things that are unaccounted for. We're at a a part of Illinois that rotates crops. So originally we were going to shoot later on in the season when we had my house will get totally like entombed by corn. To a point where you can't see anything anywhere.
Right.
We're practically in a cornfield. We're like a square or like an acre square surrounded by corn. And originally that was a huge part of the script, was this corn. People getting lost in it, people seeing things in it. And we even had written this idea of the corn sort of being a place where time and space sort of stopped. Like once you were in there, it was anybody's guess. And then we were getting ready to shoot some of the interior shots, and I saw one of the combines down the road, and I said, "Hey, do we have any idea when you're going to start planning? Because we want to film when, the crops are probably 6 feet or higher." And that's when they dropped a bomb on me, and they said, "Oh, we're actually planting beans all around your house this year instead of the corn." And at which point, like, my heart kind of sank. I'm like, oh no. So there was a large part of that we sort of had to go back and say, okay, how do we still get this feeling in this tone, but now there's no corn? We've got corn like across us that we can use, but it just wasn't what we were looking for. And then we started to experiment with, well, what if you could see some of these things? Is seeing one of these things may be almost worse than not seeing it. We were trying to do stuff where you didn't see everything, and it was the suspense of it. And then it was like, well, what if you just sort of see this very tall, sort of humanoid kind of thing that we're not trying to really put the alien label on, but obviously it looks a little off. The proportions look a little bit off. And, we end up getting a friend of ours, their child had a huge growth spurt to well over like 6.5 feet. And the weight hadn't quite redistributed with this child. And we're like, listen, we've got some stuff we've got this like black unitard and stuff, like we want to put you out here. And we also have this hat, and we sort of, it was like sort of like building a shadow figure. And then we put everything on him, and sort of because of how tall he was, how like gangly he was, like we were looking at it going, oh, this is creepy. Like and we were like feet away. We're like, oh, this is just really weird. It's like, wait till we get you out here in this field and we can barely see you. and then we were watching, the footage, and we're like, no, this is really, really working. But yeah, we had stuff in mind that unfortunately, again, because of just what happened with the off season of rotating crops, that we couldn't do a lot of the gags we wanted for the corn. And then there was some stuff that we had no intention of doing because of budget restraints,
right,
that we decided to push for. And I think that the way that we said, okay, we're just going to do this. We're going to find a way. If it's more money, we'll find a way to get the money. But towards the end of the film, with it, and I'll try not to give it away, but like as you watch a lot of horror and science fiction films, especially ones that try to bridge that gap between like traditional movie making and more found footage kind of stuff, you get a lot of these films that tend to not really give you much. You get to the end, and then they're like, okay, we need to pull the rug out from under them because, we can't try to disguise this as a real thing and then have all these, what we'd call like money shots in the business, the shots that give it away. And we were sitting there, and I said, well, what if we had a period of about 2 minutes where we give them everything? Like, what if we have these 2 minutes where we put almost all of our production value and our production money into 2 minutes, so that, we're suspending disbelief throughout the film. And then, somebody might be sitting there going, well, I know we're not going to see this, or we're not going to see this. And then we're like, okay, we need to do some green screen. We need to get some bigger digital stuff going on. Right. And then in about a minute and a half of the film, we show you almost everything that you think you're not going to see.
Right.
Which for a small film we didn't think we were going to get away with for
I
the
liked
budget
it.
that we had.
Oh, I liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think it kind of put a nice big cherry on top of it because, I did. I liked it. And I'm not going to give it away either, but you got to go out and buy the film. But
I think you'll be surprised. I think people will be surprised because I think the way that we push the film and the direction that and the journey that we take the audience on is that the audience is going, okay, I'm just going to get very, very small bits of this, and then I'm going to have to construct my own story. And then during a period of about 2 minutes of the film towards the very end, we give you a lot of it, and definitely enough for people to form their own opinions, I guess.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad that's what you're trying to get because, I know I was wondering what the hell was going on myself. So yeah, absolutely. That was cool. Now you tackle a film about alien abduction or alien encounters and such. And you're into the horror stuff. What's kind of next? Where do you see yourself a little bit down the road as far as producing?
I think the next thing for us, we've got a couple things that we're doing. One of which is I really like these ideas of narrative driven podcasts that are stories.
Right.
And we've got one that we're working on right now, which is about a cursed rock album. We wanted to do something very different from what we just did. And it's essentially a detective story about a couple of like vinyl aficionados, people who love music, audiophiles who have been looking for this 80s rock album that's supposedly cursed. And it's sort of about them trying to find it and about them getting sort of deeper into a story that they didn't think that they were going to get into. That's very occult driven when looking for this. And then as far as more traditional video stuff, I have an opportunity in front of me to do a traditional documentary. And it's, I gotta hand to you a lot of it's bizarre. It's very bizarre, but I've been fascinated with this idea of dogmen and bipedal wolves. And we've got an opportunity to film at a couple of places that are real hotspots for this. And there's a good possibility that as far as the next film, it'll be a straightforward documentary on the idea of dogmen and bipedal wolves.
Yeah, well, if you need any help on that, just feel free to ask because we've been looking at that phenomena here in Pennsylvania now for several years, and it is fascinating. I mean, some of the stuff people tell you, and
I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre to me that I just can't.
Well, it's just like a lot of his other stuff. You look at it and you think, well, how in the hell is that possible? What are these things? Are they, some type of actual being? Are they a manifestation, thought form type of thing? Are they from another dimension? That's the three things you got to ask right off the bat. And, you really have no inkling of what's really going on. But, we have had reports here in Pennsylvania that could fall on all three classifications. And, it makes you think.
Yeah, so that's definitely a point of interest for us. Because, the phenomena from a non-fictional perspective to me is so alluring. The idea of doing a traditional documentary to me, I think is something that we're very interested in doing. We've got a couple of ideas for more traditional horror films and science fiction stuff like that. But I given the opportunity that we have now, it's like I really do think that that's probably going to be where we're headed next.
Well, good. I mean, I hope you do that because I think there's a real need for a higher production as far as that phenomena goes. You see a lot of this stuff on YouTube, and it just doesn't grab what you want, the type of information you want to get.
Yeah.
There have been a few films, but they really haven't covered much more than the actual lore, the old folklore or something as to what it might be, as opposed to what people are really experiencing. So yeah, I think that's something you could cover fairly well, and
I think
put that horror aspect to it as well.
And that's also sort of what we want to do, because you see a
Right.
lot of documentaries that and again, it's strange how people really want to adhere to a format, and it seems as though it's very difficult for them to break out of a format. So
Right.
when it comes to the paranormal stuff, as far as documentaries, it's always more of a historical perspective,
Right.
and everything is interviews, and then we have a couple of dramatizations and reenactments, or it's just the investigative angle, and it's researchers out in the field, but those two rarely bleed together.
Right.
And we want to do something where we're there on site, we're also doing interviews around the area, and we're giving people some chilling reenactments that are relatively high as far as production value is concerned.
Right.
So we're looking to do something where we sort of touch on all of those documentary aspects and give somebody something that's well-rounded, but also has some entertainment value to it as well.
Yeah. Well, quite frankly, you're in an area not far from you're not far from Wisconsin. So, there's a lot of stuff going on up there. And, I'm quite sure you could be able to pull something other than just the Bray Road thing. There's a lot of other sightings as well up there.
We have a landowner that actually contacted us, who owns land here in Illinois, who also owns a tract of land in Wisconsin. And his experiences are weekly.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and he's had a couple of experiences with film and TV that unfortunately left a bad taste in his mouth, the way that he felt he was represented. And we're trying to do something a little bit different, so we hope that we can come in and give him sort of the attention that the phenomena deserves, and also what people are looking to see from it, because man, it's fascinating, and we need to have something that's equally fascinating to reflect just how bizarre that phenomena is. So I'm hoping that we're able to do that, if that is the project that we go after next.
Well, that's a subject that could use an independent mind behind it. I mean, as opposed to the network putting out a budget and telling a production company, you got to have this, and this, because we got people buying advertising. And now, if you do it independently, of course, you can put a lot of things out there that you're not necessarily going to get away with a network. So, yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for you.
And the fact that, like, I rarely go 2 hours without cursing. So,
yeah, well, I'm as guilty as that as well, to be honest with you.
Like as you can see from the film, it's like it's very difficult. So the idea of having sort of money behind it that's not my money, it's like, this is going to be
it's an
exercise in patience.
Yeah. Well, I get that. I mean, but yeah, and I can give you an actual fact of something that we incurred. When I wrote Mothman Dynasty, I sold the book like 6 months after the book came out. I sold it to a production company in New York, and they were coming up with scenarios and stuff for what they wanted to present to the networks. And of course, they eventually were thinking, well, look, you've got the Phantoms of Monsters Fortune research team. Why don't we get something together, do a sizzle reel for them, and put it out there? And they did. I mean, they came to my house. And we had the team members who lived in Pennsylvania all come down, and we actually produced a sizzle film. Well, it's one thing in producing something like that and spending a lot of work on it, as opposed to getting it actually bought by a network, and that didn't seem to work. Then again, of course, we were also talking about, well, what stuff that's going on in Chicago, but it's going to take a bit of a budget to work on that. And the COVID thing kind of killed that thing. It was on the fringe anyway, but the COVID killed it. So,
COVID has put, and this is in no way to diminish the very real physical suffering that people experience, as well as their losses.
Yeah.
But it has put a very literal, coffin nail in the entertainment industry for so many projects. It changed the entire landscape. Well, it changed the entire landscape of how films are delivered now, with the Warner Brothers HBO deal, something that we never thought we would see. that is now commonplace.
And it's probably going to be something that we're going to have from here on out. You know, it's in the ether now, so it's probably going to be something that continues because people will expect to see that. You know, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. You know, I don't know how movie theaters are going to fare with all of this. That might be something in the past. Who knows? But yeah, the whole concept of going to and watching a film at a theater might be more so you sitting at home watching it at home. So who knows?
Yeah, I think with the struggles that we've seen AMC and other chains start to go through,
yeah,
and it's a weird industry anyways, because of how theaters make money. Like we've all sort of known that they make more money off of concessions than ticket sales.
Sure.
So you've got people who are going to see something, and you know now they're sort of leery about their interactions with the staff. They're probably buying less concessions because of that. 6-foot rules, things of that nature. The entire idea of sort of where we go to movies, of this whole kind of congregation, it was sort of a ritual. It's like, for me, that was always sort of my church, was a movie theater when I was a kid.
Sure.
It was like, okay, here's a time that we go here. We have a window of opportunity to see this particular movie. We're taking the kids, we're doing this, we're doing that. There was this ritual to it, and now that's been so disrupted. I don't know if we can bounce back to where we were to necessitate 4 and 5 12-plex cinema houses in a town of 80,000 people. I think it's going to dwindle to you got one movie theater, per so many people. And then I think that once we sort of bounce back from this idea of separation and isolation, then people don't want to be crammed into that one theater, and then we'll have similar problems where when an industry has to have elasticity, but we all know that corporate America doesn't have room for elasticity. It's all bottom line. Yeah. And if they can get rid of something today and not worry about it tomorrow, they'll do it. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's funny because, you look at, you look at television productions in particular, how many of them go beyond one season now, even if they maybe don't even get past the first 3 episodes or something to that effect. It's rare. And, it's all about making the money, the advertising and such. And it's not necessarily about the story. I've seen a lot of great productions get pulled after 1 year. I mean, we all have. And it's like, oh my God, here we go again. Something I'm getting interested in, the yanking it. You might see it on Netflix or something 4 or 5 years down the road, but still.
Yeah, you get emotionally invested in it, and then all of a sudden, it's 2 seasons, and for whatever reason, mid-season they didn't get the numbers they wanted, and they got cold feet and didn't renew contracts. And it's rampant right now. It's way too common. It shouldn't be.
Well, it kind of reminds me when we were kids, and now I'm dating myself now, but we used to get the theaters on Saturday and watch the serials, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, when that stopped, it was like, well, now what? Because back then, it was just the advent of some cable television, but very little.
Oh, yeah.
And, if a movie came to the theater, you saw it on TV 5 or 6 years later on, Sunday night, the movies or something like that.
Yeah,
that was the only time you saw stuff. Now it's like it's constantly coming out. You go to Netflix, you go to Prime, and there's something new all the time. But unfortunately, like you said, you get invested with a show and you get really wrapped up in it, and they yank it, after a year, and it is frustrating.
And genre shows specifically, because of the level of production, especially when we're looking at stuff like science fiction, the more money that they're pulling into it, and if there's a risk of less ROI than they think they're going to get in that first or second season, and it's just gone, and that's difficult. Because I will say, though, I mean, we're living in a golden era, because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we didn't have all these genre shows. There was
Right.
usually one science fiction show a season that came out, and you may or may not like it. And now we have all of these choices that we never had before. So it's glorious, and yet it's also frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if Star Wars could have came out 20 years later, what would have been the fate of that? You know, would that have been so popular now? I mean, well, say in 2000 as opposed to when it came out in 77.
Right. Yeah. Those are some interesting questions. You know, it's timing. That industry is all about timing.
Well, Ash, tell all the folks how to get in contact with you, and you know, if they got some ideas or things to discuss with you, how can they contact you?
By the way, I'm very, very open. Anybody can contact me, and I will definitely try to contact you back as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
On Twitter, I am at HORRORFIX. We are HorrorFix on Facebook. Horror-fix.com is the website. If you just put in HorrorFix anywhere on Google, we're going to come up. And I usually man all of the emails, all the catch-alls and everything myself, along with some of our other, reviewers. But it's real easy to get a hold of me. Again, you got something weird, the weirder the better. Usually, I enjoy it. So I'm always looking to connect with people. I'm always looking to connect with people in film, or in ufology or the paranormal. So I'm available, and I'm pretty transparent. So yeah, you can definitely get a hold of me.
Well, it's great for you to come on tonight, and good luck with the film, and good luck with all the other things you've got planned. And you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Lon. I appreciate it. Have yourself a wonderful night.
You take care. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms and Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Ash Hamilton for joining me this evening, and thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. Now, if you did make a super chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this all possible. So like, subscribe, and share. Now, we did have a guest scheduled for next week, but unfortunately, she had to cancel out. So I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but I've got some ideas. So if there's something you think that we can put together before next Friday night, feel free to send me an email or get a hold of me on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, and we'll see what we can do. So until next week, stay healthy and have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Good night.